Why South Africa want England again, and why the wait matters more than it seems. There is something quietly revealing about the way large sections of the South African rugby public continue to call, almost restlessly, for another crack at England. The noise has been there since the World Cup final dust settled. An undercurrent of when do we play them again? A sense that this particular rivalry, despite medals and margins of dominance, remains unfinished. The answer, of course, is July 4th, 2026. Far enough away for form to fluctuate, squads to evolve, and certainty to blur. Long enough for memory to soften and new narratives to take hold. But it is the question itself that matters. World champions rarely look back. They look forward, inward, or occasionally over their shoulder at those who have beaten them. They do not usually fixate on opponents they have already overcome. And yet England occupy a curious place in the Springboks psyche, not as victims and not quite as traditional rivals, but as a reference point. A side who, for all their inconsistencies, have an awkward habit of forcing South Africa to confront themselves. That discomfort tells you something. The danger of simple explanations elite rugby is often reduced to individual ingredients, particularly in moments of reflection. One team wins because they are mentally tougher. Another loses because they lack desire. Someone points to selection, someone else to tactics or culture, as though performance at the highest level can be traced back to a single, isolated cause. It is the sporting equivalent of judging Christmas dinner on one mouthful taken out of context. Coaching at the elite level teaches you to distrust that instinct quickly. Rarely is one factor decisive. More often, it is the interaction between elements, the tension between competing demands, and the unintended consequences of sensible decisions that only reveal themselves when pressure compresses time and space. This is why polarized views are so dangerous. They simplify what is, by nature, complex, and they encourage certainty where none truly exists. Hardship, perspective, and clarity. When Kolisi spoke after the World Cup final about growing up, dreaming not of trophies, but of where his next meal might come from, the quote landed with deserved emotional weight. It was honest, raw, and reflective of a lived experience far removed from the relatively comfortable pathways traveled by many elite players elsewhere. But there's a risk in how that story is sometimes used. Too often, it becomes shorthand for the idea that South Africa win because they have suffered more, and that England, by extension, cannot compete with a mentality forged in genuine deprivation. It is an understandable narrative. It is also an incomplete one. Hardship does not automatically produce elite performance. If it did, the global sporting landscape would look very different. What hardship can produce, when processed and channeled effectively, is clarity, perspective, a sense of meaning that cuts through doubt when the stakes are highest. Kolisi's story matters, not because it makes him harder in some abstract sense, but because it anchors him. It removes ambiguity. When pressure arrives, he knows precisely what matters and what is not. That certainty stabilizes not just him, but those around him. Teams feel it. Systems align around it. That, more than biography or background, is what South Africa do so well. Why England remain disruptors, which brings us back to why Springbok supporters keep circling England. For all their fluctuations, England remain a side capable of disrupting South Africa's sense of order. They are not chaotic, nor easily dismissed. On their day, they are physically imposing, tactically abrasive, and mentally awkward to play against, as the 2023 World Cup semi-final demonstrated. They do not always win, but they consistently force South Africa to be precise. And precision at that level is exhausting. That England's historical issue has not been talent, nor even desire. It has been clarity of identity sustained over time. They have oscillated between versions of themselves, sometimes between seasons, sometimes within tournaments, occasionally within the same campaign. Each version made sense in isolation, but collectively it created uncertainty. Yet when England are properly clear, truly committed to who they are, they become deeply uncomfortable opponents for anyone. Physicality is the starting point, as it always is. England have never lacked size, power, or conditioning. That has not been the missing piece. The difference emerges when matches tighten, fatigue dulls skill, and the environment becomes hostile. This is where decision-making under pressure becomes decisive, not because it is perfect, but because it is owned. Eddie Jones once spoke about Owen Farrell not in terms of technique or temperament, but clarity. Farrell's ability to see the picture early, choose a course of action, and commit to it fully. Jones admitted that some decisions, with hindsight, might be questioned, but they were driven through with such conviction that the team aligned around them. And that alignment often mattered more than theoretical correctness to elite speed. A good decision made early and owned will usually beat a perfect decision made late and doubted. Drift erodes trust far faster than error. South Africa understand this. England are beginning to understand it too, albeit intermittently. The difference lies in how well clarity is protected when pressure mounts. Communication wins games. Communication sits at the heart of this, and it is often misunderstood. Elite communication is not about volume or charisma. It is not emotion or rhetoric. It is organization, concision, and rehearsal. Language agreed in advance so that, in the moment, nobody is deciding what to say. They're simply executing a shared code. The best teams do not talk more. They organize earlier. South Africa's systems excel here. Rassie Erasmus is a meticulous planner, and that detail brings clarity. Authority is accepted, calls are understood, and debate ends when the game begins. That does not make the Springboks inflexible. It makes them efficient. It shows in how they use their full 23-man squad. England, by contrast, have at times suffered from competing messages and shifting identities. Under pressure, that noise becomes corrosive. Why July 2026 matters. This is why the anticipation around July 2026 is so revealing. It is not bravado from South Africa, nor insecurity. It is curiosity, a recognition that England, if they ever fully settle on who they are and commit to it without apology, remain one of the few sides capable of disrupting South Africa's rhythm. By the time those teams meet again, much will have changed. Form will rise and fall. Players will come and go. Narratives will evolve and arguments will be had and forgotten. What will not change is the underlying truth that elite rugby is not decided by hunger alone, nor hardship, nor heritage. It is decided by clarity of purpose, of decision-making, and of communication, and by the courage to live with that clarity when it invites criticism. South Africa have that now. England are still refining it. When they meet again, it will not be about who suffered more or who wanted it more. It will be about who knows, with greater certainty, exactly what they're trying to do, and who commits to it when the pressure is highest.